Honorable colleagues, we are now set for today's special session. Before then, let me very quickly make this announcement that after inauguration, all members of the House Committee on Finance will meet today with the chairman in room 424 so that we can get ready for the presentation of the MTEF report tomorrow. I recognize all our invited guests, former speakers, principal officers, the ministries, departments, the agencies. I particularly recognize the presence of our service chiefs, and through you recognize our men and women in uniform, and thank you for the services that you are rendering in securing our lives. Thank you very much. Honorable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I will now invite the leader of the House to give us a welcome address.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Once again, I am Honorable Ado Dogwa, representing Dogwa to the Federal Constituency. And Mr. Speaker, I am from Kano State, and by the grace of God, the leader of the 9th House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, I rise here before this august gathering to, on behalf of the leadership of the House of Representatives, led by your able self, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the organizing committee of this august event, and by extension on behalf of the 359 other members of the House of Representatives, welcome our august visitors and guests who are here to witness with us in exercise of our tradition, parliamentary tradition, where we are going to today inaugurate our standing and special committees. Mr. Speaker, like you said, I have just 2 minutes to speak, and my responsibility at the moment is to welcome them. I therefore want, on behalf of all these people I've mentioned, to welcome each and every one of you that is here. Let me not forget to also welcome our august visitor in the month of October, the CNA of the National Assembly, who is also seated here with us. The CNA, you are welcome. And I will not forget also to, by way of sentiment, specifically welcome the former House Leader Mulika, welcome the former House Leader Abdul Zingi, and also welcome the former House Leader Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, who is also with us here. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I welcome everyone here.
Minority leader, majority leader, thank you for your welcome address. Your welcome address is fully accepted. Your last sentence, you are ruled out of order. So we will now take a goodwill message from a representative of the former speakers of the House, and that will be, I believe, by unanimous consensus, Honorable Gali Umar Naba, former Speaker, House of Representatives.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Deputy Speaker, the House Leader, the Chief Whip, members of the House of Representatives here present, my colleagues, the former speakers, former principal officers, the clerk of the National Assembly, the clerk of the House of Representatives. Let me mention other staff of this House. I thank you, the Honorable Speaker, for inviting us once again to witness this important milestone in the history of this House. Today we are gathered together here to witness the inauguration of the standing and special committees of this House. The engine or engines with which and within which the Parliament is administered and within which the Parliament works is, of course, the committees. And here I would like to say that we have very able people, very able members who are appointed to chair these committees. I personally know many of you who have been appointed chairman and deputy chairman of these committees. And our expectation is that you'll continue to strengthen these committees. The committee system is a very vital system in any democracy, in any legislature. And I pray that this would not be lost on you. And I would like to appeal again that many times we who had led this House at one time or another before feel highly embarrassed when we see or when we watch committees visiting ministries and parastatals. And it is our feeling that these parastatals and ministers should be invited to come here to the National Assembly by you. The legislature is a very important institution. And in any case, it is our belief that members of the Parliament, members of the legislature, are not auditors. When it is time to audit, you have your staff that are supposed to be visiting these ministries and MDAs. But it is not for legislators to begin to troop into government ministries and parastatals. And I believe that this is what would give the legislature its pride. I'm sorry if this offends some of you, but this is what we feel must happen. I'm asked to speak for not more than 5 minutes, and I believe that my time is up. But let me congratulate the Speaker once again for being elected to lead this House. Honorable Bajamia Mila, who we popularly call Baban Jamila in Kano, contested to become the Speaker last session, and God did not give it to him then. And this session, God Almighty has given him the opportunity to lead this house. More than at any other time, Nigeria is facing tremendous challenges. And maybe that was the reason God Almighty has spared him to be the speaker this time around. I know him so well. I interacted with him very well. He's a man of intellect. He's a man who is very, very used to interact with his people, not only in Lagos or the Southwest, but all over the country. Some of us watched him even teaching in Katsina recently, teaching in the classroom young school girls and boys. And our feeling is that anybody that hasn't got that sort of compassion in him would not go out of his way and enter classrooms the way he did. It's my prayer that God Almighty guides and protects you to lead this house in a manner that conforms to propriety and in a manner that Nigerians would feel that they have a House of Representatives. I also would like to seize this opportunity to congratulate all of you, members of this House, for winning your elections and coming to this House to represent your constituencies. And my prayer also is that you will prove your constituencies worthy. I had just discussed with the chairman of the police committee about something I had been reading constantly in the newspapers. The police have been complaining about that the laws on kidnapping should be strengthened. And Parliament is supposed to be a very sensitive institution. And it's like the police are expecting that the executive would bring a bill to do that. And the legislators also are hoping that the executive arm would bring a bill to do that. It's like nobody is doing anything about it. I discussed with a lot of people, some of them in the police service. And I thought that I should mention this to you so that you take up this responsibility. It's unfortunate that an exercise that we started in 1999 to review, and notate our laws, which we did. There is a book we produced in 1999, which you hoped the House in 2003 would take up, and they did not, on our laws, because many existing laws have either been amended or even repealed, but still the courts adjudicate with them. And it is your responsibility to look at our laws entirely with a view to doing this sort of work. It is your responsibility, and I urge the Judiciary Committee and the Committee on Justice to take up this responsibility immediately and begin to work on them. And I would like to recommend Honorable Ita Enang or Senator Ita Enang to the committees, because we started this with him so that you know what we mean and what is supposed to be done. Because not doing that would continually put our nation at peril. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving us the opportunity to talk to you, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I think we have the representative of the former clerks. I believe that is Mr. Nasir Arab.
The Honorable Speaker, the Honorable leaders of the House, Honorable members of this House, the Clerk to the National Assembly, former Speakers of the House of Representatives, former clerks of the National Assembly, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I stand here before you on behalf of the former clerks of the National Assembly to first of all congratulate you for being worthy of being elected from various constituencies of the Federation to represent the people of this country. I would like also to emphasize here that the committee work is the engine room of the Parliament. The work of the Parliament is generally referred to various committees for them to do the nitty-gritty of the work of the Parliament and then report back. I hope this selection made will prove to the nation that it was a well-deserved appointment. So on behalf of my colleagues, the former clerks of this assembly or this house, I thank you very much for giving us this opportunity again. When I was the former clerk, I was sitting with you here before I moved to the clerk of the National Assembly. And you have given me another opportunity to stand before you and to speak to you. I thank you very much. I thank you on behalf of my colleagues for this honor. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. The next item we have on the agenda will be two short presentations by two speakers. The first will be Alhaji Ibrahim Salim, and he'll be speaking very quickly on fostering smooth legislature-executive relationship here in Nigeria. Alhaji Salim.
Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, I want, with your permission, sir, to adopt the protocols that were read out here. Won't stand on them. Honorable Speaker, sir, this appearance for me is the déjà vu. I used to be here several times, but this is the first time I have the opportunity to stand here before you. And this is due to the initiative of the Speaker. The Speaker has decided now to give us a voice, and we appreciate what the Speaker has done. And we also thank all of you for giving us the opportunity so that we can hear the voices of the people who administered this place before. Maybe you can benefit from the voices. Having said that, I also want to congratulate you on your elections and on the inauguration of the House, and also want to congratulate you for continuing the tradition of standing this House on its feet, standing the National Assembly on its feet, ensuring the independence of this place, the independence of this arm, the independence of the legislature. We are grateful to you people for continuing the tradition that was started so that democracy and good governance will continue to be entrenched in our society, in our nation. It is my singular honor and esteemed privilege to have been invited to make a presentation on this auspicious and historic occasion of the inauguration of the committees of the 9th Assembly of the House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is axiomatic that the legislature is the fundamental, foundational basis and fulcrum of any democracy the world over. In fact, when you take away the legislature, there is nothing that can point, in point of fact, that could be called democratic system of government. No wonder, for instance, that when military intervention in government was fashionable, the first and perhaps the only casualty, as soon as that infamous announcement, fellow countrymen, we members of the armed forces, blah, blah, came all through the airways. It was usually the legislature that was immediately suspended, while the other two arms of government, namely the executive and the judiciary, continued to function almost seamlessly. The only exception where a little provision was made was during the time of General Sani Abacha. When the legislature was disbanded, we went to him and pleaded with him that the structure should be maintained, that the nucleus of the staff at both national and state level should be retained. Unfortunately, he agreed with us, and that was the basis, the foundation of the staff that we used to service the 1994-1995 Constitutional Conference. And it was the same crop of staff that graduated into being used to establish the current legislature from 1999 today. So I salute the ability of all these people, the staff that have serviced this legislature all through these years. They deserve our accolade, they deserve our attention because they suffered. They suffered during the period of the locusts. So we thank you very much. Before I start assessing the factors that foster executive-legislative relations, there is need to look at the variant of type of legislatures based on which this relationship is built. We have 4 variants. There is the rubber stamp legislature, the simplest of legislatures, It simply endorses decisions made by parties and or executive branch. Example of this are the Dumas of the former Soviet Union and the Mexican Congress. Features of that legislature, the little internal structure or expert staff. They do not conduct legislative sessions, non-democratic, communicate with students extensively, do not process great quantities of information. They do not hold public hearing and do not amend laws and budgets, and their resource requirements were normally few. The second one is the arena legislature. These are more powerful than the rubber stamp legislatures and are places of real discussion, speech, and debate. Example, the British House of Commons, which is today an arena legislature. Their features are they do not initiate or amend policy proposals. The information needs are greater than the rubber stamp legislatures. They require sufficient internal capacity to organize debate, utilize a committee system, and channel the business of his house, capacity to analyze proposals in order to comment on them critically. The next one is the transformative legislature. This kind of legislature represents the diverse societal interests and shape budgets and policies. Examples are the US Congress and our own legislature. Features, they amend legislation and budgets, receive from the executive branch, initiate your own policy proposals, reach out to citizens, and conduct public hearings, but they are expensive to operate. Highly complex internal structure, including strong committee system, utilize information greatly, and depend heavily on highly trained professional staff. The fourth is the emerging legislature. These are in the process of change from one type to another. They exercise great influence over government policies and carry out oversight responsibilities more effectively. Emerging legislatures cause major legislative changes, such as amending rules and procedures, building stronger committee, expanding professional staff, developing improved information system, and others. Examples are Mexico Congress, Kenya, Uganda parliaments. Their features are they are an assertive legislatures and they play assertive role. And they are very independent and because they are in the process of change from one type to another. So now, what is the relationship between the executive and the legislature? Legislature and executive in the Nigerian context. It is gratifying that after a long period in the history of Nigeria, which was marked by intervention of the military in governance of the country, the nation a couple of months ago marked an unbroken period of 20 years of civilian democratic rule. This is a milestone indeed, because prior to this, the longest we had ever experienced was 6 years after independence between 1960 and 1966. And after 20 years, Nigeria's democracy can no longer be called nascent, but a couple of years ago, it was lightly so described, having just emerged from authoritarian military rule. And by happenstance, the person who emerged as president following a return to civilian rule was a retired military general. So, a combination of authoritarianism, which was dominant political culture, which values norms and attitudinal dispositions many Nigerians had internalized already, and the emergent political will driven by the former general, that was a perfect recipe for confusion, a perfect recipe for friction between the executive and the legislature. The legislature thought to impose itself, while the executive was regarding it as an irritant. That was what we suffered at the take-up of this legislature, because the executive at that time, led by Chief Obasanjo, wanted to pocket the legislature, and in fact succeeded to a level. But there were people who started this legislature, people like Gali Abba, who were determined to face the moving train, and they confronted the dictatorship and the authoritarianism of that administration. We confronted, and they were able to protect the members and the legislature and even the staff. So they deserve our commendation and appreciation. The relationship of the two arms of government can best be understood and analyzed within the context of the doctrine of separation of powers as propounded by the French philosopher Montesquieu. It is the practice of allocating powers of government among branches to avoid concentration of powers on one arm as to enable it to overwhelm the others to the point of abuse or tyranny. The doctrine, therefore, advocates the separation of governmental powers into legislative, executive, and judicial, where the legislature is saddled with the function of making laws for the order and good governance of the country, while the executive implements the laws and the judiciary interprets those laws in order to settle conflicts where conflicts may arise. In Nigeria, the doctrine of separation of powers was first introduced by the Presidential Constitution of 1979 and was retained in 1999. It was instructive, and I dare say, perhaps for a reason, that in allocating powers to the three arms of government, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, listed the legislature ahead of both the executive and the judiciary. The premise of the Constitution allocated powers in Section 4, 5, and 6 of the Constitution to the legislative, executive, and judicial arms in that order. Section 4 of the Constitution vests legislative powers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the National Assembly, which shall consist of the Senate and House of Representatives. Although the Constitution provides for separation of powers explicitly, as if each branch of government remains inviolate with separate and distinct roles. However, the complexity of governance necessitates growing interrelationship among the branches of government in practice, that through checks and balances, they can work harmoniously in a bid to ensure that no single branch gains absolute powers over the other. Indeed, the National Assembly, or the legislature as a whole, do have monumental, immense powers. You have express powers. Express powers of control over public funds, Section 8083, approval of executive judicial appointments, the Sections 147, 153, 238, 250, approval of appointments of new vice president in the case where the president dies midway, power to impeach the president or the vice president, Section 143, Section alteration of the Constitution, Section 8 and 9, oversight function, Section 88, 89, 128, 129 for the Houses of Assembly, ratification of treaties, and the executive appointments, powers to regulate your own procedure. But there are also implied powers, e.g. powers of appointment also means that of removal. So if you can appoint, you can also remove. And you have also powers outlined for you under the privileges and immunities, which are conditions necessary for you to prosecute your own powers provided elsewhere. Privileges, that is rights enjoyed by the legislature collectively and by members of the House individually, conferred on legislative houses by Powers and Privileges Act, Cap 208. Section 109 applies to the states. There is also powers given to you under the privileges relating to freedom of speech. You are free to speak what is speech at a debate. It also covers any document circulated by a legislator in the form of report or motion, that is, members are insulated from any liability. Freedom of arrest or molestation. You are immune to arrest or molestation, and this is derived largely from customs and convention. No arrest or molestation during sitting or when journeying to and from the legislature. You cannot be arrested except for treason, felony, or breach of peace. Privilege of evidence before committees, powers to order attendance of witness, issue and service warrants or summons to produce documents before any committee of the House. Powers to compel attendance of witness by means of issuance of a warrant of arrest directed at a police officer for the apprehension of a witness to come and testify before the legislature. Restriction of evidence as to certain matters of legislative, this one is also provided. Restriction of access to legislative house without approval, nobody will enter the house, even the chambers. But of all these powers conferred on the National Assembly by the Constitution, perhaps the most widely and most commonly deployed is the investigative power, which the House exercises through its various committees appointed under the power derived from Section 62 of the Constitution. The section provides that the Senate and House of Representatives may appoint a committee of its members for such special or general purpose as is, in its opinion, would be better regulated and managed by means of such committees, and may by resolution, regulation, or otherwise, as it thinks fit, delegate any function exercisable by it to such a committee. The power to conduct investigation conferred on the Senate and the House of Representatives by Section 88 of the Constitution is only for the purpose of exposing corruption, inefficiency, or waste in the execution or administration of laws within the legislative competence of the National Assembly, and for the purpose of any investigation under Section 88 above. The Senate or the House of Representatives is empowered by Section 89 of the Constitution to procure evidence, like we said, require evidence to be given, summon the person, issue warrant of arrest, and take care of whoever refuses or neglects to do so. You have the power, and it's better for the members of the executive to realize that when they are summoned by this House or the Senate, they must hearken to the summon. Otherwise, you are empowered to make use of your posts to bring whoever refuses to answer to that summon. The Senate of the House of Representatives can summon any person to appear before either at plenary or before any of his committees. Most of the time, however, the oversight functions are conducted through committees of both houses. And in the course of carrying out those oversight activities, conflict may arise between some committees and some ministries and departments and agencies of government on the extent of the investigative powers of the committee and for what purpose. At certain times, officials of the government defy the assembly. That one should never be allowed. The issue of relationship between the assembly, the executive and legislature is a two-way thing. It's a mutual thing. We are not saying that the legislature should be subservient to the executive. Neither the executive should be subservient to the legislature, but there should be mutual respect because each has its own area of operation. So if you are as an executive and you are called to appear before the members of the committee is very important, you know, in this kind of setting. The committee in the US, they call them little legislatures. So they are the engine room, like Nasser pointed out a moment ago. And if a committee decides to call you, and because you feel you are a member of the executive, you don't want to come, you are disgracing the legislature, and that should never be tolerated. Whatever measures the legislature should take to enforce that power to bring the members of the executive or any other person before the legislature. That one is inviolable and must be defended by all the members of this House. But, like I say, it is symbiotic. It's a sort of symbiosis, give and take. You give and we take, we give and you take. But if you continue taking, that one will not be tolerated. I hope those who have ears have heard this, and they should comply. They should abide by this so that the independence and the integrity of this legislature could be defended. I'm saying this because I say it from experience. We suffered a lot along the line from the time we take off to today. Like I said, we persevered. Even the staff were made pariahs in this Abuja. They didn't even have where to sleep. Tell you, we were at the takeoff. Many didn't have where to sleep, but they persevered. You know, many didn't know what to do, and we were being given 25 million, you know, per annum. What would you do with 25 million at that time? But that was what we were being given. But they persevered. They tolerated all this, and we came through. And thank goodness, the legislature is now established, firmly on the ground, and nobody can do anything about it. I congratulate you. So I'm appealing to the executive and to the legislatures to cooperate so that our nation can be moved forward. If we don't cooperate, people are saying, his legislature was good because they wanted to, they were used to confrontation. This ninth legislature should not confront anybody. You can get whatever you want through diplomacy. You can get it through give and take. You can get it through mutuality of understanding and exchange of ideas. There is no need for confrontation. But the Nigerian people were used to confrontation in the 8th legislature. This one should not be repeated. We have an ideal situation now where you can talk, you can start things together. Whatever is going to be done by the executive, even the budget, you should start it up initio. When you are formulating the budget, you should involve this legislature. So that by the time the budget is presented, you know, everybody is aware of where to go. And there will not be any friction. So, in conclusion, therefore, it is advisable that ministries, departments, and agencies should honor summons to appear before either the Senate or the House of Representatives at plenary or before any of its committees as failure, refusal, or neglect to do so will not ensure a smooth relationship necessary for orderly and efficient governance of this country. And this could tempt the legislature to use its enormous powers. We don't want the legislature to be tempted to use those powers. So please, let's move in the direction of understanding and give and take, mutual exchange of ideas, mutual exchange of issues, so that the legislature can move together. And that is the only way this country can move forward. There is no other way. If anybody wants to do confrontation, good luck to him. Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. The next topic for 20 minutes will be the role of committees in the presidential system of government, and that will be presented by the former DG, the Institute of Legislative Studies, Professor Ladi Amalai.
The Honorable Speaker, sir, Principal Officers of the House of Representatives, former speakers present, former House leaders present, distinguished honorable members, invited guests. May I especially also recognize the Chairman and Secretary of EFCC. It's my pleasure being here today. It's an honor to come back here after a few months of being away from the National Assembly. And I hope that a few words I present here would be useful to the committees. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Let me start by congratulating all of you for winning your elections. I especially congratulate the Honorable Speaker as well. I know I've done so in the past, but let me use this opportunity to repeat my congratulatory message. The Clerk to National Assembly, Clerk House of Representatives. I'll be faster if I read my speech. Committees are normally seen as subdivisions of the legislature to increase the level of productivity and efficiency. Committees are the factory production lines of the legislature. Committees wield a great deal of decision-making powers in the sense that most legislative decisions are taken at that level. Cummings says committees are where the Congress does most of its work, policies are shaped, interest groups heard, and legislations hammered out. It is said that committees are most powerful where parties are weak. Powers of committees increase when the ruling party loses majority control. Professor Schultz has observed that, in fact, where the committees are strongest, one finds the lowest level of party control over the committees. It is also said that presidential regimes are especially conducive to powerful committees. But they are also to be found in parliamentary systems where no single party dominates the legislature. Therefore, giving credence to the notion that weak parties make for strong committees and vice versa. The argument on influence and power of committees can also be presented by scrutiny of the typology of legislatures, which the previous speaker has actually enunciated. So I will skip that portion, but let me just focus on the transformative legislatures, which he says, or he said, Nigeria belongs to. And the best example of a transformative legislature in the world is the United States Congress. Nigeria has two caps. It's an emerging legislature because it's still young, and also it has the characteristics of a transformative legislature. Transformative legislature serves as an independent shaper of policy, has powers to initiate policies, rewrite appropriation bills, shape and channel societal demands, as well as reconcile and channel conflicts. The committee system is very strong in a transformative legislature. The transformative legislature requires to develop the internal capacity of a highly complex modern organization capable of performing all of these functions. There's the need to have extensive capacity to generate independent information, evaluate and initiate policies, evaluate policy implementation, and be able to sanction the executive. I will just go ahead and outline some of the critical success factors that Nigeria should imbibe to quickly transit from being an emerging transformative legislature to a fully represented transformative legislature as the US Congress. The first is the application of the legal framework. Nigerian legislature has one of the strongest sets of constitutional powers among African legislatures. One of Neil's publications listed 120 powers in the Constitution. Other powers are embedded in the schedules. That is why when interviewed in 2016, legislators had this to say: NAS has the power to compel the executive to comply with requests for information. NAS has the power, but some committees are too close to the MDS under their jurisdiction. Besides our powers, I'm just quoting, besides our powers to compel the executive to release information, the Freedom of Information Act makes it easier to get information from MDS. Another quotation: it is not a question of the availability of power. NAS has the power to function optimally in terms of oversight. What is lacking is commitment and using the available powers. However, legislators of the strong opinion that the legal framework fails to enable enforcement of oversight recommendations, motions, and resolutions. In most countries, resolutions of parliament are not enforced but implemented by the executive. For example, 50 to 80% of the resolutions of some of the key committees in Lok Sabha, such as Defense and Agriculture, are implemented by government. They are not questioned most of the time. The success factors seem to be good synergy at the level of policy development between the committees and the relevant government agencies, as well as sometimes strong personality of committee chairman. There's also a strong tracking system in the Lok Sabha. Resolutions are tracked by committees and reported upon. What is perhaps missing in the Nigerian National Assembly is the tracking mechanisms. I know that most resolutions are treated in a routine manner and communicated to the executive through mails as House resolutions. Most committees don't make it a point of duty to follow through to ensure a response is received. I know some committees that have attempted very hard to get the attention of the presidency or MDAs or resolutions or oversight recommendations that need to be implemented had succeeded in the past. Another notable is that some of the resolutions may not be relatable or supported by budgets to attract serious attention. Whatever be the case, it will be difficult to make resolutions enforceable because they fall short of being laws. I suggest committees engage relevant MDAs and the presidency over resolutions emanating from their work. Snap interactive sessions with the MDAs may be useful in pulling through a resolution. Each committee should have a desk for tracking of their resolutions and bills processed. Quarterly reports should be viewed and adapted by committees. Committee budget is also another critical success factor, the second one here. There's very little legislative committees can do if they are not effectively funded. Oversight visits, training, public hearings, inquiry, analysis of bills, referred, all guzzle up money. Without funds, these committees cannot be carried. Without funds, these activities cannot be carried through. Committees must be properly funded. That may be one of the reasons why legislators are accused of being funded by same agencies they are oversighting. Mean no disrespect. The total budget for the Nigerian National Assembly has been between 120 to 130, and it has been declining in terms of proportion to National Assembly, to the national budget. In dollar terms, in 2015, we have about $600 million. The United States Congress has $4.3 billion to spend. Committees in the United States Congress spent $295.4 million in 2015. U.S. Congress spent $106 million in 2015 on only library and books. Now, let me come again. The U.S. Congress spent $106 million on books and library alone in 2015. The $18.8 million allocated to NAS committees can be gouged by only oversight function and may not even be enough. We estimated the financial needs, we in NILS in those days, what is really needed to effectively discharge their functions, public hearings, meetings, oversight, and so on, summed up to $99.8 billion. Naira, sorry. 99.8 billion naira to do this committee, to do these functions effectively. If you calculate the number of committees by the number of members of a committee, by the amount needed to undertake oversight function, let's say 4 times in a year, calculate the DTS and the rest, you come up with almost 50 billion naira. So what this says is the contrary to public outcry. I believe NAS is underfunded and committees are impoverished and compromised. They are left to depend on MDAs and the sponsors of bills to fund their activities, which is a negation of their independence and a negation of some of their ethical codes. There is an urgent need to improve the funding of committees through budget allocations, and in addition to uncollapse some of the collapsed funds. You know what it means. Benchmarking Committee activities such as meeting, oversight, visits, public hearings, interactive sessions, and so on and so forth, reporting and communicating, need to be benchmarked. Committee activities are benchmarked based on either comparative standards or establishment of new benchmarks based on research. IPU, UK House of Commons, World Bank Institute, and so on have come up with benchmarks for committees. Some of the suggestions include like minimum of 5 oversight visits, minimum of 5 public hearings, minimum of 5 interactive sessions with NDS per year. IPU ranks parliaments by presence and quality of websites as well. The 8th House of Representatives developed and adopted 6 manuals which provided some benchmarks to cover some of these activities. Implementation of the guidelines in the manuals is yet to be assessed. Studies by Niels show that committees met on the average of 3 times a year. Most committees. There are a few committees like appropriation, public finance committees that met over 50 times in a year. I've also seen committees that performed up to 24 oversight visits in 2016. Indian Lok Sabha committees average about 12 oversight visits a year. Canada House of Commons committees held the average of 30 meetings each, while the finance committees up to 50 or more than 50. The US Congress committees, for example, have public hearings ranging between 23 for some committees and up to 323 public hearings in a session of 2 years, some committees. I suggest that committees should meet at least 10 times in a year, perform oversight visits at least 5 times in a year, and conduct public hearings on all referred bills, with the exception of bills strategically put to sleep. I am aware that many bills are arrested because of lack of funds. Funds should be provided for all public hearings. Reporting. I have 5 minutes. Sure, I'll finish in less than 5 minutes. And communicating constitute the heartbeat of committee activities and provide a public face for the legislature. Critical to the life of a parliament are the documentation, preservation, and dissemination of committee reports. Preservation of these reports is the institutional memory of the parliament. I have often encountered a response that reports of previous years of a committee are not available. I had to resort at times to asking legislators if they had their personal copies at home. Reports of chamber plenaries, verbatim reports, meetings, and so on, and sessional reports amongst others, if properly done and presented to the public on the web, would make visible parliamentary work and lead to public appreciation. This will in turn remove some of the bad publicity. Committee reports differ greatly in length from a few paragraphs to several hundred pages. Most congressional committee reports have sessional reports exceeding 100 pages, detailing all the activities. Canadian House of Commons, annually, the committees of Canadian Commons annually have reported between 100 to 200 reports, and they are all on the web. US congressional committees have more. I've read a sessional report of a congressional committee that exceeded 500 pages. We need competent staff to do that, and I suggest that each committee should have a website. Web pages are available for committees on the national website. Committees could also develop their own website and create a link with the NAS website. We should invest resources in developing, archiving, preserving our reports as the lifeline of the legislature. Institution building is also important, where we have all the resources, the competencies, and so on, that will keep the legislature going effectively. I know the Nigerian National Assembly has one of the best institutional capacity in Africa. What may be missing is the quality of human resources. If the quality of the legislature is compares with any part of the world, we have 79% of legislators that have degrees. In the UK House of Commons, about 90%. US Congress, 95%. So in terms of qualifications, we are not in shortfall. However, we interviewed committee chairmen, and the chairman, 54% of the chairmen told us that they are not satisfied with the quality of staff. So that takes us back to probably the quality of the education and the recruitment process. We need to revise the recruitment process to committees. Committee work is serious work. It's the lifeline of the legislature. You must have the best hands, hire the best people to man these committees. Legislators cannot do analytical work. It's the staff that do the analytical work. That is why most committees in the US Congress can boast of some of the most competent people as committee staff. Now, I would also say that most of the committee staff can be gotten competently even from within the system. You do an audit of your staff. Pick out the best hands and put them in the committees where there are shortfalls. Develop a criteria, a requisite, requirement for employment. Apply those requirements strictly. You end up getting the best hands to man your committees. Most of the work of committees in parliaments are done by the committee clerks, the committee staff. If they are weak, the committee work would be weak. So you need to salvage this situation as a matter of emergency. Let me conclude by saying few lines on integrity issues. Poor public image and moral questions have been a dark cloud overhanging the Nigerian legislature. Most of it we know are not as portrayed by the public, but they don't know that. That said, there is a need for internal self-assessment and adherence to the manual on ethics approved by the House of Representatives. Erosion of integrity leads to erosion of power and erosion of effectiveness. I am sure we don't want that, and thus we must change. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We'll go to the main exercise, which is to formally inaugurate the committees. The former speakers, former principal officers, former clerks, our service chiefs, MDAs here represented, friends of the House, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the House, I welcome all of you to the inauguration of the standing committees of the 9th House of Representatives, and I thank you all for being present here today. The legislative committee system is as old as the legislature itself, and it is through these committees that most of the work of the legislature is done. accomplishments are achieved. Whatever the judgment of history will be for this 9th House of Representatives, whether for good or bad, will depend largely on the conduct and the activities of the committees we are inaugurating today. In constituting these committees, the leadership of the House of Representatives has taken time to ensure that members are assigned to committees that fit perfectly with their legislative interests and priorities, their prior experience and skills, as well as the identified needs of the constituencies they represent. It is now left for you, the chairman and members, to go forward and show yourselves capable of meeting the responsibilities to which you have been assigned and deserving of the mandate which you hold in trust of the Nigerian people. I charge you to be dutiful in the discharge of your constitutional responsibilities of oversight and lawmaking, taking every care to ensure that at all times your conduct is without reproach and your service is motivated only by considerations of the best interests of our country. You know as well as I do that our country for several years now has been contending with serious challenges on multiple fronts, from the economy to national security, social justice to healthcare, infrastructure to the environment, and climate change. This is a time that calls for determined efforts to achieve substantive reform and ensure that our country can overcome its challenges and take advantage of the opportunities that abound for economic advancement and social development. I trust that as you recognize these realities, your efforts will reflect this recognition and be motivated by it. Let me use this opportunity to appeal to the ministries, departments, and agencies of government for their cooperation and collaboration. It is only through our joint efforts that we can meet the objectives of this administration and keep the promises we have made to the Nigerian people. We in the House of Representatives intend without reservation to exercise the full authority of the legislature as it relates to the oversight of the MDAs. However, our purposes are not punitive, neither are our intentions adversarial, but in furtherance of our shared objectives of national development, peace, progress, and prosperity for all. To this extent, we will be fully supporting and empowering our committees, particularly the Committee on Legislative Compliance. This is for effective oversight. The ad hoc committees on the Niger Delta Development Commission and that on the ports and harbors are to conclude their investigations and submit their reports by Friday, the 4th of October, 2019. All other ad hoc committees are to conclude their activities and submit their reports before the 14th of October, 2019. I thank the chairman and members of these ad hoc committees for their dedication and a job well done. Already the House has begun to act on some of the issues that have been unearthed and the recommendations they have made. These efforts will continue through the respective standing committees. Let me say once more that the job of nation building is a joint task, and the ambitions we have for our country can only be achieved through the dedicated efforts of every citizen, especially those of us elected officials, in whom our fellow citizens have invested their hopes, their dreams, and their expectations of a better life for themselves and a better future for their children. We must never lose sight of this reality, as to do so would be a betrayal of our commitment to God and country. I congratulate all of you, Chairman, Deputy Chairman, and members of the standing committees of the 9th House of Representatives, and I wish you success in your new assignment. By the powers vested in me through the Constitution and the House rules, I hereby inaugurate the standing committees of the House. Once again, I thank the former presiding officers, former principal officers and members, former clerks, service chiefs, MDAs, and the lovers of democracy for your attendance. Thank you and God bless you. think we'll get a vote of thanks by the Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, vote of thanks, please.
Our respected Speaker, respected members of leadership, distinguished colleagues, CNA, Board of former presiding officer, ably represented here by our leader, Honorable Ghana Napa, and Honorable Ete, former members of our Board of Principal Officers, respected former body of clerk, CNA, clerk of National Assembly and CNA, and clerks of National Assembly, distinguished members of both heads of board and processors, our first contact and appreciation goes to our gallant men, chiefs, army chiefs. They are present. Special recognition to GMD, NMPC, members of the press. On behalf of National Assembly, House of Representatives Assembly, I stand to appreciate all of you that have been here to give us the support for this very particular occasion. Special thanks to Sir Salim and DG Former of News, who gave us a very thought-provoking speeches here and lecture. I believe we have learned a lot, and we have gained, and we're going to utilize it. May God bless you, reward you abundantly. Thank you very much for being part of us. Thank you for the support. We pray God to grant you journey mercy back to your destination. Thank you, sir.
Honorable colleagues, before we adjourn, let me quickly announce that there will be a meeting of all chairmen and deputy chairmen with the leadership of the House in room 0.28 at 7 p.m. tonight. All chairmen and deputy chairmen, please attend this very first inaugural meeting between yourself, your good selves, and the leadership of the House at 7 p.m. room 0.28. Leader, can you please move for adjournment? Oh, that one. Yes, sorry. Our guests can leave before we do our adjournment, please. Whip. Can you escort the guests out, please?
Sorry. Our guests can take their leaves, please. Our respected guests can take their leaves, please. Our respected guests can please take their leave. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, and God bless you.
colleagues, order. Honorable colleagues, order. Honorable colleagues, order. The House has not adjourned, though.
Well done, my leader. What is this?
Honorable colleagues, can we have our seats? We have not adjourned. Have one hour so that we adjourn.
Honorable colleagues.
What's their name?
You got nothing. Is anybody here?
Chairman Basic Education. Have your seat.
Honorable colleagues, please take your seats so we can adjourn the House properly.
Honorable Mali. Honorable Aminu. Honorable Aminu. Honorable Aminu. Honorable Zakari. Honorable Mali. Honorable Zakari. Honorable Aminu. Order. Chief Whip, clear the aisle.
Announce it loud.
Chief Whip, clear the aisle. Members, honorable colleagues, sit down. We have to adjourn properly. Honorable colleagues, order.
Honorable Ben Carlo and his team, please, can you take your seats? Honorable colleagues, please take your seats so that we can properly adjourn the House.
Listen to Speaker.
Honorable Chinedu, you are welcome. All right, leader. Honorable colleagues, I congratulate all of you once more for your membership of various committees. I pray and hope that we will use this the opportunity afforded to further the interests of our great country. Leader, adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable members, my name is Honorable Ado Dogwa, representing Dogwa Tunumwada Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, as you directed, I rise to move that this House do adjourn to tomorrow, the 3rd of October, 2019, by 11 a.m.
Honorable Shehu Balarabe. Honorable Shehu Balarabe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Shehu Balarabe, representing Giwa and Plenary Federal Constituency in Kaduna State. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Kaduna State. I hereby second the motion raised by the leader of the House. Thank you. I saw second. Sorry.
Motion for adjournment having been moved by the leader of the House and very, very well seconded by Honorable Shehu Balarabe. The House is now adjourned till tomorrow 11 a.m.